Good afternoon, everybody. It's the last week of the month, which means that it's time for another episode of How to Speak Maintenance. My name is Jason Fein. I'm with Camden, and with me, as always, is Becca Ramati from TAAEF. Hello, Becca.
Hey.
It's always a lot of initials for me to pronounce. So today we have some special guests with us that I would like to introduce. With us, we have Debbie Wiatrek from Asset Living. Debbie is the vice president and for the Southwest region. So welcome, Debbie.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
I think the last time we spoke, you said you guys manage upwards of 100,000 units, correct?
100,000 units, fifth largest management company in the United States.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Exciting.
Yeah. And then we have Chris Walulik. Hello, Chris. He is the project manager, field coordinator, and trainer at Oasis Fire Protection. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you maybe tell the audience a little bit about Oasis and what you're where you guys are located.
Oasis Fire Protection, we pretty much are located in Houston, Texas as our central office. We do Houston greater area, Southeast Texas. We do some work in Austin, Texas and surrounding areas of Austin. We do anything from pretty much high-rise apartments down to single family home dwellings.
That's great. I know that at Camden, we've had the opportunity to work together a lot. So I appreciate everything you've done for us. So in our last discussion, we spoke about the importance of maintenance training. If you were not able to join us, you can find the recordings on the TAAEF YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn sites. In early November, though, you'll also be able to find our discussions where you download podcasts, which is super exciting. Very cool stuff. So feel free to download it and watch our videos and learn more about how to speak maintenance. So last week, we had some great conversations, though, around maintenance training. And one of the largest topics was that we train so that we can avoid costly repairs in the future. This really leads us into the calls that we're going to have today, the discussions we're going to have today, which is about fire protection. This past winter was one of the roughest that I've seen in my life. We had frozen domestic lines, high electric bills, power outages, and frozen sprinkler lines. Maybe Debbie, you can tell us a little bit about your experience during this past Texas winter.
Yeah, as much as I'm going to try to forget it, Jason, I'm going to go ahead and remember for our call today so that we can learn and move forward from it. I would say in all the years that I've been doing property management, this was one of the worst days of my career, this storm, all the way from a property in Dallas having over $500,000 in repairs, down units, up until last week. So that's a really long time. So loss of income, revenue, just all of the tough things that we experienced. We had a senior community where it wasn't just snow. At one point it was ice. So the seniors weren't able to even walk on the sidewalk. We had, people at many of our communities using the swimming pools to fill their commodes. So it was just a terrible situation, Jason.
I remember it. It was definitely rough. It's good that you finally got the last property back up and running, though.
Very excited to move forward.
Yeah. Chris, from a vendor perspective, what sort of impact did you guys have, and what are your thoughts on this past winter?
This past winter basically was an eye opener. It brought our industry pretty much to a standstill, and we had to deter all of our resources to try to help all these properties get back up and running, get these properties fixed up to where they can have life safety, not be on fire watch, have people move back into their apartment units. It stretched our industry very, very thin. It stretched our labor resources thin. It stretched our suppliers for material very thin. And it showed us what Mother Nature can actually do.
Definitely. One of the things that I realized is it showed the vulnerabilities of each one of our communities, where we might have penetrations through the walls, where cold air can come in and be able to impact a pipe that maybe wasn't insulated as much as it should have been to be able to take care of that kind of winter freeze. So kind of some of the causes of the frozen sprinkler lines. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the cause of the frozen sprinkler line. So inadequate insulation in the crawl spaces, attics, inside walls. You know, Chris, from a vendor NFPA standpoint, you know, we built these properties and they didn't withstand the cold. What are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, that's a good point, Jason. I mean, yes, these properties are built to the local codes of the AHJ, which they adopt, they amend to their standards. I mean, they based off of the IFC, which is the International Fire Code, or the International Building Code, the IBC, which both International Code Council books reference back to NFPA for more detailed code analysis. And to that, they list different ways of freeze protection and prevention that is acceptable. But at the end of the day, it's still up to the AHJ on what they're going to accept in that installation. But it also goes back to showing that sometimes there's inadequate insulation, like you said, in crawl spaces and attics. If that was there to help along with our preventative measures, it might have prevented a little bit more. But what we came to find out is not only was minimal insulation in certain instances, it was when the electricity went out was the major cause of a lot of problems.
Agreed. Now, let's talk about that a little bit. So you have a wet system. Do you mind, for the people that don't know a lot about systems, you know, sprinkler systems, just do you mind talking about what a wet system does? And
no, that's fine. Typically on most systems that you see installed in apartment complexes within units or even shopping centers or churches, hospitals, is what they call a wet automatic system. The system is completely filled with water, waiting to be activated by some kind of heat source that will activate a certain sprinkler within that area, and it will distribute a spray pattern to wet the environment or suppress the fire. So, and then there's certain instances where we have to install piping where areas are subject to freezing, which would be a dry system, which the dry system is a system that is supervised with air. And then once the head activates, the air pressure cannot maintain, water pressure overcomes in a dry pipe valve assembly. Water will fill the system and it will distribute through the system and out the open sprinkler head. And then same thing, suppress the fire or make the environment saturated with moisture, so it's not a very good environment for fire to spread.
Right.
Which the dry system, going back, it requires the system to be supervised by air, which the air compressor needs electricity to operate. Then there's another one where in certain instances and certain AHJs will allow us, well, AHJ means authority having jurisdiction, will allow us to use heat trace, which the heat trace we have to show heat trace heat loss calculations and everything else. And which once again uses electricity, also monitored by low voltage, which would be fire alarm for supervisory. And if you, in a perfect world, if the electricity is working, heat trace is working. So when you have loss of power, heat trace doesn't work and it can't keep that piping from not freezing. Same with the dry system. If there's no power to supply to the air compressor, then the air compressor can't maintain system pressure. Water will overcome the system. It enters in all the piping arrangements, which the piping arrangements is already in a cold environment. And you start putting water over that cold environment, it will start to freeze pretty quickly, and then you're going to have busted pipes.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the power situation, because in the end, I know that a lot of property management companies were relying saying we're safe because my wet system is in a conditioned space and my dry system is being protected by the heaters and by the air compressors. And nobody ever anticipated the power going out, which in turn opened up Pandora's box and ended up causing bigger issues. So one of the things that I always like to talk about is that you're not going to be able to find the issues until the pipe thaws out, correct?
Correct.
Right. So during the freeze, I think a lot of people, they didn't see any leaks, they didn't hear anything from residents, and so they thought maybe they were through the woods. And then it wasn't until the temperature started to go back up again, and that's when you started to see things. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about was what sort of precautions we can all take to be able to try to minimize impact and be able to help the residents through the cold. So, you know,
And I
one
have
of
to
the things,
imagine, Jason, that this is a great time, or at least a better than January time, to start thinking about these things and to put this into action. So not only what can the maintenance team do, but then also maybe what can the rest of the staff on site do to help the maintenance team, even if they're not, if the office team or leasing team can't go and, do XYZ, maybe they could do, ABC to help out. So let's keep those things in mind as well.
definitely, Debbie, I mean, your office teams are probably very engaged in these processes and getting the properties ready for the winter, correct?
Yeah, we are. I would love to say we were ready, Jason, for February. We weren't. However, I do feel that from instances like this, we learn, we grow, and we move forward. So, some things that we would definitely do different is look at currently, buying perhaps portable generators at some of our sites, because we're not going to be able to find portable generators 3 days before the storm or during the storm. Having ample material and supplies on stock in hand. We were fortunate enough that we have quite a few properties that surround the Mexico border. And when everyone ran out of supplies here, we were thankful that we could find, supplies elsewhere. I also think that having a maintenance person stay at each asset is something that we're definitely, bringing forward in the event this happens again. Having salt, sand just on hand to where maybe the only thing you can de-ice is that small path to the pool area in the event something like this happens again. So definitely we'll be prepared, better prepared if and when this comes around again.
I like what you said about maybe having an employee on site, whether it's maintenance or it's office, right? Because in the case that the roads are impassable, you won't be able to help take care of the residents. I know that was one of our struggles at Camden, was having somebody getting to the community in time. So,
well, and responding to the residents. We had a lot of feedback of, why are you not helping us? And we were just as stuck as they were. We couldn't get any more bottled water than you could. And so that was a little hard for them to understand. But I think from an empathy standpoint, Jason, if someone at each site would have been there, that was employed there, it would have been a little bit easier having those face-to-face conversations.
Agreed. Chris, during our conversations, you spoke about battery backup systems and how they react to cold as well. Do you mind talking a little bit about that?
Sure, not a problem. Not only does the fire protection, the sprinkler side, get impaired by cold weather, also to the fire alarm system. Your fire alarm system, sometimes those electronic components don't really like the cold too much and they don't operate very well. And if you're not routinely doing inspections on your properties and checking your fire alarm systems, they have battery backups. And just like your car battery or anything like that, over time, that battery will wear down. So if that battery has a bad charge or a bad cell, cold weather hits it, that battery's not going to be available. And then going back to this past freeze, when the power gets lost, and the batteries are supposed to be working. Well, if that battery's not working, then now your fire alarm system, which is supposed to notify your residents of any issues or anything like that, or management that, hey, there is another issue, that system's completely not working at all.
Right. That's a good point. This cold weather, it's not just impacting water, it's impacting electronics. One of the things we discussed was drip drums. And right now is the best time to be going and emptying drip drums and checking them, correct, Chris?
Correct. Usually the key for Texas and Southeast Texas and South Texas, usually when you're moving from summer to fall, when we're starting to transition from hot days to cool, hot days, warm nights to warm days to cool evenings, that's when you really need to start paying more attention to your drum drips on your dry systems, your low point drains on your dry systems, making sure your air compressors are kicking on when they need to be kicking on, making sure the power's available to them. Because once you start getting into the temperature swing, that's when these devices are active. Because during the warm day, the heat is going to make the air inside that pipe expand, which is going to cause the pressure to go up. But at night, just like, humidity at night, when it's cool, it condenses. So the pressure is going to condensate. It's going to go down. The pressure is going to go down. The air compressor is supposed to kick back on to maintain that air pressure. And if that's not happening, then the pressure can get actually pretty low, and you'll have a false activation of a dry system, and now you have a full system of water.
For those of you that don't know about drum drips, the dry sprinkler systems in your garage and attics, they have low points. So as we're talking about condensation, the water needs to be removed from the pipes. And so the pipes are pitched in a way so that the water goes to a device where you can be able to open up the top valve to be able to let the water into the actual drum drip, close that valve to keep the air in the pipe, and then open the bottom. I hope I did it justice, Chris. I hope I.
No, you did. It's also that way you can remove the water that's accumulated within the low point and get it out of there safely without activating the dry system or shutting the dry system down to drain the collective water. And
we bring this up because sometimes drum drips are not ignored, but forgotten about. And then when this first cold freeze comes into town, that drum drip that's behind a pillar in your garage that's chock full of water becomes the first one that pops, and then you've got alarms activated and residents that are upset. So the whole reason why this conversation is important, because we want to make sure that everybody understands the importance of getting out and doing these things, not just right before a freeze. Chris, you mentioned it. This is something you need to be doing on a regular basis, correct?
Correct. It's part of NFPA 25, which is the National Fire Protection Association. They have their own code books all the way from aircraft hangars to jet fuel to NFPA 101, which is life safety. They have different code books. NFPA 72, which is for fire alarm. They have multiple ones, but in this instance, the NFPA 25, which is for inspections, testing, and maintenance. Inside that book will tell you the intervals that different systems should be tested at. Different components of that system should be inspected or maintenance or tested at certain frequencies. And it also gives you different checklists on do's and don'ts. So it would be advisable, if the property doesn't have one or the maintenance personnel doesn't have one, to probably acquire one. That way they can be a little bit more knowledgeable on the actual sprinkler system and stuff like that. So when it is time for annual inspections, biannual, semi-annual, quarterlies, 3-year, 5-year inspections, they can actually understand what the sprinkler contractor is doing when they are performing these testing or inspections.
That's great. No, it's a handy guide to help you make sure that you're doing what's required. So in a hypothetical situation, hopefully none of us run into this, but you've gone through your property, you've done everything that you can possibly do to make sure that you're ready for this next freeze, and you know that you're going to run the risk of potentially freezing sprinkler lines. What can I do as a property manager? Should I call my sprinkler vendor and talk to them about potentially draining my system?
Yes, before you, if it's your last resort, before you even touch that valve and open that drain, I would consult with whoever your sprinkler contractor is that you use on your properties. I would reach out to them, touch bases with them, ask them if maybe they have any ideas that's not been thought of, or if they can come up with something that will help you. And then the very last resort, if it comes down to draining it to maintain the integrity, they can also either help you notify the AHJ that the system's going to be out of order. They can also help you locate someone to do fire watch. That way, not only is the fire department aware of the situation, the property is aware of the situation, everybody is aware. So that way, if something does happen at that property, the local authority and fire department is aware of the situation, so they can come better prepared to your property in case there is an emergency.
It's a great point, because the sprinkler vendor will definitely have those relationships with
Yes.
the local fire department, and that would definitely help you out. That's great. This is all great information. Some of the other things that we were talking about, Debbie, you were talking about filling up the bathtub at one point in time with water before a freeze.
I did. So fortunately, we have counterparts. We're in 42 states. So we did reach out to some of our cold weather friends, unlike here, and some of their suggestions were fill the bathtub with water so that you have that on hand to flush the commode. If you have a washing machine in your apartment home, that you could fill that with ice. That became handy when we lost power. It was only handy for a day or so, because then that ice melted, but it kind of kept some of the food cold for a little while. At that point, open your door, because it was like 5 degrees and you have all the cold you need for your food. But I think the biggest thing is having the salt, the sand, having the bottled water, and it just made us have a plan moving forward, a plan that we didn't know we needed, Jason. So definitely something that we all lived through, that we all learned quite a bit from this time.
And I think
Right.
probably a team mentality too. That was one of the things that I was struck by from the freeze last year, particularly at Robert Hills, who was our maintenance Be the Next Room to Grow ambassador winner at Camden property. He talked about what a team effort it was to deal with the issues that were right in front of them, but then also the aftermath, to deal with those things and fixing and cleaning up and repairing. And so talking about those team mentality for situations like this, I would imagine, Debbie, is really an important role that you and others have to play.
Well, especially since some of our employees that live on site turned out to be the leasing associate that was in the office, or the assistant manager. And so, yes, having maintenance walk them through over the phone how they can help, what they can do, how to shut off, the water that's running everywhere in situations where we could. Definitely a team effort, having someone that when that call comes in that says water is going everywhere and I don't know what to do, having a team that can handle and respond appropriately, ask the right questions also, so that maintenance goes over to that unit prepared, because we run into that sometimes too, where they're not gathering enough of the critical information. So then maintenance is going over to the apartment, checking out what they need, and then going back to the shop. Or, if you gather all the information that you need up front, it's easier on the whole team.
Definitely. At the beginning, you mentioned not waiting till the last minute, finding generators a couple days before a storm or a couple days before a hurricane. Trying to find those necessary parts is going to be nearly impossible. So I think it's important to make sure that as the weather is improving and it's in the 70s and everybody's out and about and we're not thinking about winter yet, this is the best time to actually probably start to think about winter and get prepared for it. So,
And Jason, some of those generators at the older properties are gas. So that would have been great if the gas would have been filled and checked to make sure that it worked. Yeah, that's now on a monthly maintenance check log to run that baby, make sure it starts up. So just valuable lessons that we learned.
definitely. Chris, one of the valuable lessons that I want to hit home here is, what can our teams do to better partner with our sprinkler companies in the event we do have one of these freezes again?
Well, the best thing to do, Jason, is if you have a relationship with a certain contractor, sprinkler contractor that you use to do your routine inspections or your yearly inspections, you can reach out to them for training. You can reach out for them to come up with a plan of action. I've actually seen some properties have a 3-ring binder that's tabbed for different shutoff procedures. So that way, if any one team member is on site and the others are not, they can go to that manual and there's step by step on how to turn certain pumps off, turn certain valves, where certain valves are located to turn off. They have a plan of action. Your local sprinkler contractor can help you put one together. I'm pretty sure your plumber can do the same thing for domestic, if so be. Also, another thing is to reach out to your local sprinkler contractor, because if they're the ones doing your inspections, they know your property, they know your system, they know the piping, they know where things are, and that way they can better help you.
Definitely. During the height of all of it, emotions ran high. I remember everybody was trying to get a sprinkler company to come to their property, and they were calling multiple sprinkler companies. They were taking a shotgun approach to trying to get their property back up and running as quickly as possible. What sort of things can our property managers and maintenance teams do to better equip you as you're trying to weed through all of the repairs?
Well, like a discussion you and I've had before, it would be in the best interest if the property team, whoever's actually making the phone call, if they can get or obtain as much information about the property, the damage, or what they might think is wrong, and give that to the sprinkler contractor so they can come out and be better prepared with material, labor, and any other equipment they might need to get the repairs done in a timely manner. I will give a little example. We've had a property call us and they told us that they only had one leak. That was it. So I sent out a small crew to fix the one leak because that's all they had. And I sent bigger crews to other properties that told me they had multiple problems, multiple leaks. So then I have a report back that the one property that told me they only had the one leak actually ended up having over 60 something leaks.
Yeah.
So then I have just a small crew that's tied up at this one property, and they're making multiple trips to the vendors to try to get material. And like we said before, sometimes the roads were impassable in certain spots. So it made it longer than it should be to get the repairs done because we didn't have all the information that we needed.
Right. Which just goes back to the fact, just get all of your data together when you're talking to the vendors. Cut a hole, see if it makes sure it's a fire sprinkler pipe. You'll save on expenses by making sure that if a fire sprinkler company comes out and they're charging that trip charge, that in the end it is actually a sprinkler line that's broken. So, and then they actually know how many holes, how many leaks they have. So that's good words of advice there. So to close it out, I mean, would either of you like to say your number one takeaway from this winter storm?
I think our number one takeaway would be how to be better prepared, how to avoid the problems that we learned, this year. I'm all about new problems, I don't like repeating the same mistakes.
No problem.
I would definitely say though, having great supplier partner relationships was key for us. I mean, definitely detection and the pictures. And if, our team was able to start cutting out holes in the walls, that was helpful. But once again, I go back to everything, our relationships in this industry, save us on a daily basis.
Chris, do you have any closing? takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, we pretty much took a big lesson from this, and we found some do's and don'ts, and we are using that knowledge to pass on to new construction. That way we can educate, we can help try to prevent certain instances or more problems in the future. And also too, we're using this as an educational tool for things like this, other properties that we communicate with, and when they call up and they ask us, is what do you think y'all can do, or what do you think we can do to better prepare? And so we're using, I mean, I don't want to take anything lightly from what happens, but like Debbie said earlier, we learn from lessons. So we're using this as another education to help better people to prepare for the future.
Agreed.
And
I know it.
Chris said yesterday, watch the weather, pay attention. And I thought that was a really good thing that seems obvious, but really worth sharing and making sure that we remember that little piece.
Definitely.
Yes, ma'am. That's true. A lot of times that's the best tool is to pay attention to the forecast. I mean, sometimes they're not a month in advance, but at least they can give you 3 to 4 days or more preparedness before something happens.
Definitely. Well, Debbie, thank you so much for joining us. I hope that Asset Living is better prepared because of you guys' efforts, and you're ready for the winter that is possibly going to be coming towards us. And Chris, thank you so much for everything that you and your team at Oasis Fire Protection do for us. So once again, another great call. I appreciate your time.
Yes, sir.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us.